mainly patrol insertions or dust off for me. I didn't do gunship work, and three particular ones which I thought of. One was my first time that I ever did as co-pilot with Bevan Pettit, an SAS insertion which went bad. We landed in the pad, came to the hover, we all heard a gunshot. This was after the SAS guys had deplaned. Flew away knowing we're going to have to go back and pick these guys up again. And so at that stage I was quite new, so I thought I'll defend this part of the aircraft with my trusty 9mm Browning, which when we got there, whoever had been there from the opposition had probably departed the scene because there'd been gunships and whatever. SAS all jumped on and we flew, and I thought, God, I've cocked this thing. What do I do? And I thought, do I shoot it out the window to get rid of the round up the spout or whatever? Anyway, I finally got that resolved, but I resolved after that the most dangerous thing in Vietnam was going to be me and a Browning 9mm, so I always kept an empty magazine in it and carried a full one on should I need it. There was a couple of... I really enjoyed dust off because you were generally on your own, and you got to do something quite unusual, maybe at night or maybe out of province or whatever. And I had one of those where was out of province. The US dust off had been shot up, staggered off to crash somewhere, and we were invited to go, and we did a really long winch. The jungle there must have been the best part of 200 foot high, so it was remember it's 256 foot was the length of the cable, and we used a lot of it and did 2 double winches while the American on the other end of the radio on the ground is having a major panic. And eventually, fortunately, he got kicked off the radio and someone competent took over, and anyway, we got 4 guys out of there. There was 2 American Cobras, Playboy something or other, who were supposedly acting in support of us, but they were way over there. I was used to having our gunships being in nice and close, but we pulled out of there, it was getting on last light, took these guys to Long Bin. Otherwise they would have been there overnight, no one would have got in overnight. That was really gave you a buzz when it was all over. It gave you a bit of the horrors while you're sitting there in the hover for probably 15 minutes, but it was quite memorable.
I would imagine you'd feel quite exposed.
Oh, very. But as the pilot, it wasn't too bad because you were really concentrating on keeping things going. As the co-pilot, and the co-pilot and I meet up most Anzac days, and he recalls how he's trying to get his feet up underneath himself into the seat, and all he could do was just sit there and read the engine instruments and let me know that everything was humming along there, but had very little else to do. And probably the last one I'll talk about is an SAS patrol that I'd inserted later in the piece, and we used to fly away and wait for about 20 minutes. The formation, there'd be the flight leader, the 02, which was the aircraft that dropped off the SAS, the 03, the spare, in case something went badly wrong, and 2 gunships. And we'd go and hold somewhere away and wait and see if the SAS were okay. And in this case, after 5 minutes, instead of coming up on their beeper, and then someone just held down the press to transmit, and you could hear automatic weapons fire in the background. So I figured, probably not going well, going to have to go back. And after it all got sorted, we went back to pick these guys up. And there were some things, very few things that I remember quite vividly, but this one was quite vivid as we're coming down final, the collective on the floor, decelerating, nose high, and being overtaken by a rocket down the left side from a gunship, and seeing a tree explode out to the gunships were brassing up the left side of the pad, the SAS were coming out of the right. Plonked on the ground, there's probably about 5 guys, running across out of the tree line, and then I see these big gouts of earth being driven out of on the way towards these guys and thinking, Jesus, this is looking really bad. And then I realised a second or so later it was the SS guy firing over his shoulder, stitching up the ground 5 feet behind him, and away we went. But I do remember that coming down finals, it should have been set to music, rockets, minigun, all this stuff. It should have been set to music, Ride of the Valkyries or something. But there's lots of little incidents, but most of it was as boring as batshit.
Which probably you should be thankful for, because that sounds too close to comfort. I mean, Iroquois in a tank, you know.
Yeah, that's right. And I was really lucky. I never got a hold in an aircraft.
Yeah.
So many guys did, and so many guys it seemed to happen to 2 or 3 times, which is good statistically because that means it wasn't happening to me. And fortunately, and one of the things that probably contributed to our overconfidence was we had not had a fatality before I got there. And then we had one in June. A couple of months later, crewman died. And then we had a couple of friends who were, Ron Betts was killed on a gunship. And then my second last day in country, I picked up the crewman Al Bloxham off the dust-off, who'd been shot while I just happened to be going past when they got shot up. Followed him in, picked up Al, took him to hospital, but he died shortly thereafter.
So it sounds like things were becoming more precarious near the end.
Yeah, or maybe we just ran out of luck, I think, because there was all sorts of, when I look back to what happened with other people and other actions, I think we just ran out of luck. While I was there, Ron Mitchell and Punchy Patterson came to the hover over what they thought were the friendlies to drop ammunition to them through the trees. And when the bad guys got sick of ammunition falling all over them, they stitched up the helicopter, and I think they hit it 20 or 30 times. Didn't hit anything vital, actually hit Ron right in his seat. Did no damage to him or anyone else. In another instance, one of our guys got hit right in the middle of the chest with a 7.62 round, but he was wearing his chicken plate. Took a big piece out of it, didn't feel a thing, he was sweating so much. But then things, statistically, you've got to... and the final one, after I'd left, we lost the dust-off shot down, and then Lofty Lance and crashed up in the rubber up north of, in the last 6 months, but everyone's winding down, going home. Wrong time to get killed. So